There's a quiet pull inside you right now, asking you to say less, even when you feel like explaining everything. It doesn't feel like fear. It feels intentional, like something is guiding you to pause for a reason. And part of you already knows this silence matters more than you can explain. Chosen one. There are moments in life when the guidance you receive does not come loudly, does not arrive with urgency or noise, and does not demand attention in a way the world usually teaches you to expect. But instead it settles quietly within you like a knowing that doesn't need to explain itself, like a gentle shift in direction that feels both unfamiliar and deeply true at the same time. And this is one of those moments. You may have noticed recently that something inside you has been asking you to pause before speaking, to hold back words that you would normally express without thinking, to step away from conversations that once felt natural. And at first, it might have confused you because you are not used to silence feeling like instruction. And yet here it is, calm, steady, and persistent. Not everything you feel is meant to be spoken right away. Some things need to stay protected. Comment 777. Amen if you feel this too. Because deep down you know this pause isn't random, it's purposeful. This is not coincidence. This is direction, not loud, not forceful, but intentional. There is a reason why you are being guided to keep your words hidden for the next 48 hours. And it is not about fear, and it is not about avoidance, but about alignment. Because sometimes speaking too soon can disrupt something that is still forming, something that needs space, something that requires protection before it can fully take shape in your life. You are being asked to hold your energy close. Not everyone needs to know what you are thinking right now. Not everyone needs access to what you are feeling or planning or sensing within yourself. Because the truth is, when something is still becoming, when something is still delicate and unfinished, it is easily influenced by the reactions, opinions, and energies of others, even when they do not intend harm. And you, chosen one, are in a space where something within you is quietly shifting. It may not yet be visible on the outside. It may not yet make complete sense even to you. But it is real, and it deserves silence. There is a kind of protection that only stillness can provide, a kind of clarity that only comes when you are not constantly explaining yourself, not constantly responding, not constantly translating your inner world into words for others to understand. Because not everything is meant to be explained in the moment it is experienced. Some things are meant to be lived first, felt fully, understood slowly, and then, only when the time is right, shared with intention. Right now is not that time. Right now is a time of quiet observation, of listening more than speaking, of noticing what rises within you when there is no pressure to respond, no need to fill silence, no urge to prove or clarify or justify your path. Because in this silence, something important happens. You begin to hear yourself more clearly. Not the version of you shaped by expectations or influenced by outside voices, but the deeper voice that has always been there, waiting patiently beneath the noise, waiting for a moment like this where you finally give it space. And this is why your words are being guided into stillness, because there is wisdom unfolding inside you that cannot be rushed. There are realizations forming that need time to settle. There are emotions that are reorganizing themselves, finding their place, finding their meaning. And if you speak too quickly, you risk interrupting that process. You risk sharing something that is not yet complete, not yet clear, not yet fully yours to give. So for these next 48 hours, allow yourself to step back gently. You do not need to announce this. You do not need to explain it. You simply move differently. You respond less. You listen more. You choose silence where you would normally choose expression. And at first it might feel unfamiliar. There may be moments where you feel the urge to speak, to fill the space, to return to your usual patterns. But if you stay present with it, if you allow the silence to remain, you will begin to notice something subtle yet powerful. A sense of calm. A sense of control that is not forced, but natural. A sense of being rooted within yourself rather than scattered across conversations and reactions, because your energy is no longer being distributed outward. It is being gathered, centered, protected, and in that space clarity begins to emerge. You may start to see things differently, You may recognize truths that were always there but hidden beneath noise. You may feel a stronger connection to your own direction, your own pace, your own sense of what is right for you, without needing confirmation from anyone else. This is what silence makes possible. It is not emptiness, it is depth. It is not withdrawal, it is alignment. And you are not being asked to silence yourself forever, only to pause long enough for something within you to settle into its rightful place. Because once these 48 hours pass, you will not be the same in the way you speak. Your words will carry more intention, more clarity, more weight. Not because you tried harder, but because you allowed yourself to become more grounded before expressing them. You will notice that you no longer feel the need to explain everything. You will feel less urgency to respond to every situation. You will become more selective, more aware of when your voice is truly needed, and when your silence holds more power. And this shift will not come from effort. It will come from experience. From these quiet hours where you chose to listen instead of speak, where you chose to observe instead of react, where you allowed yourself to be still in a world that constantly encourages noise. So do not resist this direction. Do not question it too much. Simply follow it with trust. Let your words rest. Let your thoughts breathe without being spoken. Let your energy stay with you. Because something meaningful is unfolding in this quiet space, something that cannot be rushed, something that cannot be forced into words before it is ready. And you, chosen one, are being gently guided to honor that process, not by doing more, not by saying more, but by allowing yourself to be still long enough to truly understand what is taking shape within you. And as you remain in this space of quiet restraint, something even deeper begins to reveal itself. Something that you might not have noticed before, because it only becomes visible when the usual patterns are interrupted, when the automatic responses are softened, and when you allow yourself to exist without constantly expressing every thought as it arises. You begin to see how much of your speaking in the past was not always coming from clarity, but from habit, from the subtle need to be understood, to be acknowledged, to maintain connection even when that connection was not fully aligned with where you are now. And this realization does not come with judgment, but with a gentle awareness that you are evolving beyond the version of yourself that needed to explain everything in order to feel secure. There is a quiet strength forming in you, chosen one, a strength that does not depend on being heard in every moment, a strength that is not diminished by silence but actually deepened by it. Because when you are no longer seeking immediate expression, you begin to recognize that your presence alone carries meaning, that your awareness itself is enough, and that not everything valuable about you needs to be spoken out loud to be real. And in these 48 hours, you may also start to notice the spaces between interactions, the pauses that you once rushed to fill now becoming places of insight where you observe more than you participate, where you feel more than you explain, and where you begin to understand people's situations and even yourself with a level of clarity that only comes when you are not actively trying to respond. You may notice how others speak. You may notice the energy behind their words. You may notice what is said and what is left unsaid. And without needing to analyze or react, you begin to perceive truth more naturally, more quietly, more accurately, because your mind is no longer occupied with preparing your own reply. This is one of the hidden gifts of silence. It sharpens your awareness without effort. It brings you closer to truth without forcing understanding. It allows you to see beyond surface-level interactions and into the deeper layers of what is actually present. And at the same time, you may also become aware of your own inner dialogue, the thoughts that arise when you choose not to speak them, the feelings that surface when they are not immediately released through words. And instead of pushing them away or trying to resolve them quickly, you simply observe them, allowing them to move through you naturally without resistance. This is where real clarity begins, not in the act of speaking, but in the willingness to sit with what is within you without needing to immediately define it. Because when you give yourself that space, you start to understand which thoughts are passing and which ones are meaningful, which emotions are temporary and which ones are guiding you towards something deeper. And this discernment becomes easier, more natural, more intuitive. You are not trying to control your inner world. You are learning to listen to it. And this listening requires silence, not just externally but internally as well, where you begin to release the need to constantly interpret everything, to label everything, to turn every experience into something that needs to be explained or shared. Some experiences are meant to remain personal for a while. Some understandings are meant to stay within you until they are fully integrated. And this is part of what these 48 hours are offering you. A space to integrate, a space to become more settled within yourself, a space to recognize that not everything needs to be expressed in order to be valid. And as you move through this period, you may also notice a subtle shift in how you relate to others, where you feel less pulled into unnecessary conversations, less inclined to engage in exchanges that do not feel meaningful, and more comfortable simply being present without contributing words unless they truly matter. This is not distance. This is discernment. This is you beginning to understand the value of your voice, not by using it more, but by using it with greater intention. Because when you reduce the amount of unnecessary expression, what remains becomes more precise, more aligned, more reflective of who you truly are, rather than who you felt you needed to be in order to maintain connection or avoid discomfort. And in this quiet refinement, something else begins to settle into place. Your relationship with yourself becomes stronger, more stable, more independent of external validation, because you are no longer measuring your presence by how much you say or how others respond to it, but by how grounded you feel within your own awareness, how aligned you feel with your own inner sense of truth, and how comfortable you are simply being without needing to constantly express that being outwardly. This kind of grounding changes you in ways that are not immediately visible but deeply impactful. It shifts how you move through conversations. It shifts how you respond to tension. It shifts how you hold your energy in environments that once felt overwhelming or draining, because you are no longer giving away parts of yourself unconsciously through constant expression. You are choosing when and how to engage, and that choice brings a quiet sense of control, not over others but over your own presence. And as these 48 hours continue, there may come a moment where you feel a deeper stillness settle within you, a kind of calm that is not dependent on circumstances. A kind of clarity that does not need to be confirmed by anyone else. And in that moment you may realize that this direction was never about silence for the sake of silence, but about helping you reconnect with a part of yourself that has always been steady, always been clear but often overshadowed by the noise of constant expression. This part of you does not rush, it does not react impulsively. It does not feel the need to explain itself to be understood, it simply knows. And when you begin to trust that knowing, when you begin to rely on that quiet inner stability, your relationship with words naturally changes. You speak less, but you mean more. You respond slower, but with greater clarity. You engage selectively, but with deeper presence. And this is not something you need to force. It becomes natural. It becomes who you are becoming. So allow these remaining hours to continue unfolding without pressure, without expectation, without the need to measure what is happening, because the most meaningful shifts often happen quietly beneath the surface, in ways that are only fully understood once they have already taken root within you. And by the time this period comes to an end, you may not have dramatic realizations or sudden changes that can be easily described, but you will feel something different within yourself. Something more settled, more clear, more grounded, and that difference will guide you forward not through loud declarations or immediate explanations, but through a steady, quiet confidence that no longer needs to prove itself through words. And from that quiet confidence, something even more subtle begins to take shape within you, something that cannot be rushed or forced into awareness, but instead reveals itself slowly as you continue honoring the stillness, as you continue allowing your words to remain unspoken unless they are truly necessary, and as you continue choosing presence over reaction in moments where you once felt compelled to respond immediately, you begin to notice that silence is no longer something you are practicing, but something you are becoming comfortable within, something that feels less like an effort and more like a natural state, where you are not holding back out of discipline but simply because there is no urgency within you to speak unnecessarily. No inner pressure pushing you to fill every gap with sound. And in this comfort you start to experience a deeper sense of self-trust, because you are no longer relying on external exchanges to confirm what you already feel inside. You are no longer looking for your own thoughts to be validated through conversation, and instead you are allowing them to exist fully within you, to mature, to settle, to become clearer without interference. This is where your inner foundation strengthens, not through constant activity, but through intentional stillness, not through expression, but through awareness. And as this foundation becomes more stable, you may begin to notice how your emotional responses start to shift in subtle ways, where situations that once triggered immediate reactions now feel more distant, more manageable, more neutral. Not because you are suppressing anything, but because you are no longer automatically engaging with everything that arises around you. You are observing first, feeling fully, and then choosing your response if a response is even needed. This creates space between stimulus and reaction, space between thought and expression, space where clarity can exist without being rushed. And within that space, you begin to see how much of your previous patterns were shaped by speed, by the habit of responding quickly rather than responding consciously, by the subtle belief that silence might be misunderstood, or that not speaking might create distance, when in reality you are now experiencing that silence can actually bring you closer to truth, closer to yourself, and even closer to others in a more genuine way. Because when you do choose to speak from this place, your words are no longer scattered. They are grounded, they are intentional, they carry the weight of presence rather than the urgency of reaction. And people can feel that, even if they do not understand it consciously. There is a difference in how your energy meets theirs. A calm steadiness, a quiet certainty, a sense that you are not trying to prove or convince or seek approval, but simply expressing what is true for you in that moment, without excess, without noise. And this changes the dynamic of your interactions in ways that are subtle but meaningful, where conversations may become more focused, more real, more aligned with what actually matters rather than what simply fills time. At the same time, you may also become more aware of what does not resonate with you anymore, not in a judgmental way, but in a clear and grounded way, where you can sense when a conversation, an environment, or an exchange does not align with your current state. And instead of forcing yourself to engage out of habit or obligation, you feel more at ease, stepping back, remaining quiet, or simply not participating in the same way you once did. This is not disconnection, this is clarity. This is you recognizing where your energy belongs and where it does not need to be placed. And as this awareness continues to deepen, you may find that your need for external noise naturally decreases, not because you are isolating yourself, but because you are no longer dependent on constant input to feel engaged or fulfilled. You are able to sit in your own presence without discomfort, without restlessness, without the need to distract yourself from what is within. And in that ability, there is a quiet sense of freedom. Freedom from the need to constantly explain yourself. Freedom from the pressure to respond to everything. Freedom from the habit of oversharing before something is fully formed. Because now you understand the value of letting things develop in their own time, of allowing your inner world to settle before you bring it into the outer world. Of recognizing that not everything needs to be shared immediately in order to be real or meaningful. Some things gain their strength in silence. Some things become clearer when they are left untouched by outside opinions. Some things are meant to be held within you until they naturally find their moment of expression. And you are learning to trust that timing, to trust that not speaking right away does not mean you are missing an opportunity, but rather that you are honoring a process that is still unfolding, a process that requires patience, that requires space, that requires your willingness to remain present without rushing toward conclusion or explanation. And this patience begins to extend beyond just your words. It begins to influence how you move through your life as a whole, where you feel less urgency to force outcomes, less pressure to define everything immediately, less need to control how things are perceived by others, because you are becoming more comfortable with allowing things to be as they are in the moment, trusting that clarity will come when it is ready, not when it is demanded. This shift is quiet, but it is powerful. It changes how you experience time, how you experience decisions, how you experience uncertainty. Because instead of reacting to uncertainty with immediate action or explanation, you are learning to sit with it, to observe it, to let it reveal what it needs to reveal without interference. And in doing so, you begin to realize that much of what once felt urgent was not truly urgent. That much of what once felt necessary to say did not actually need to be spoken. And that much of what once felt unclear simply needed time, not more words, not more discussion, but more space. And this understanding settles into you gently, without force, without resistance, becoming part of how you naturally move, how you naturally respond, how you naturally exist within your own awareness. So as these final hours continue to unfold, there is nothing you need to add, nothing you need to do differently, nothing you need to achieve, because what is happening is not about doing, but about allowing, about staying present with this quiet alignment that has found its way into your life, about trusting that this stillness is not empty but full of meaning, full of subtle shifts that are shaping you in ways that will continue to reveal themselves over time. And when you eventually return to speaking more freely, you will not leave this stillness behind. You will carry it with you, not as a rule, not as something you have to remember to practice, but as something that has become part of your nature, part of how you engage with the world, part of how you honor your own energy and your own truth. Because once you have experienced the depth that silence can offer, once you have felt the clarity that comes from not rushing to speak, once you have recognized the strength that exists in holding your words until they are truly ready, you do not return to the same patterns in the same way. You move differently, more aware, more intentional, more grounded within yourself. And this grounded presence becomes something you carry into every interaction, every decision, every moment where you are given the choice to speak or remain quiet. And instead of choosing based on habit or expectation, you choose based on alignment, based on what feels true, based on what is actually needed rather than what is simply automatic. And in that choice there is a quiet sense of integrity, a feeling that your words and your silence are no longer separate, but part of the same awareness, part of the same presence that is now guiding you gently, steadily and without noise exactly where you are meant to be. And within that gentle guidance, you may begin to sense something even more refined emerging from this experience. Something that does not announce itself loudly, but instead settles into your awareness with a quiet certainty. A recognition that your relationship with expression itself is transforming in a way that feels both subtle and deeply significant at the same time. Because it is no longer just about choosing when to speak or when to remain silent, but about understanding the deeper intention behind both, about recognizing that your words are not simply tools for communication, but extensions of your energy, reflections of your inner state and carriers of whatever clarity or confusion exists within you at the moment they are spoken. And now, having spent this time allowing your inner world to settle without immediate expression, you begin to feel the difference between words that come from stillness and words that come from restlessness, between speaking that is rooted in awareness and speaking that is driven by impulse. And this distinction becomes something you can sense almost instantly, without needing to analyze or question it. There is a softness in the way you hold your voice now, not weakness but gentleness, not hesitation but intentional pacing. You are no longer in a rush to say everything that crosses your mind. And in that absence of urgency, your presence becomes more grounded, more composed, more aligned with something deeper than surface-level reactions. And this shift begins to influence not only how you communicate, but how you listen, how you receive others, how you interpret the spaces between words where meaning often exists in a quieter form, not always spoken but felt, sensed, understood beyond language. You may notice that you are able to sit with others in a way that feels different, where you are not preparing your response while they speak, not waiting for your turn to express, but actually absorbing what is being shared, allowing it to settle within you before any response arises, if it arises at all. And in doing so, your interactions begin to carry a different quality, one that feels less transactional and more present, less about exchanging words and more about sharing awareness, where even silence between you and another person no longer feels uncomfortable or empty, but simply part of the connection itself. This is a quiet kind of depth that cannot be forced. It only comes when you are no longer trying to fill every moment. And you are beginning to understand that now. At the same time, you may also become more aware of how your energy feels in different environments. How certain spaces invite stillness, while others seem to pull you toward unnecessary expression, and instead of unconsciously adapting to those environments, you begin to remain centered within yourself, choosing your level of engagement with greater awareness rather than being shaped by what surrounds you. This is where your sense of self becomes more stable, less influenced by external noise, less reactive to shifting dynamics, more rooted in your own internal alignment. And from this place, your boundaries begin to take on a quieter, more natural form. Not something you have to enforce through words or explanations, but something that is simply felt through your presence, through the way you engage or choose not to engage, through the way you allow or do not allow certain energies to enter your space. You are no longer over-explaining your limits. You are embodying them, and this embodiment carries a kind of clarity that words alone often cannot convey, because it is consistent, it is grounded, and it does not shift based on the need to be understood or accepted. It simply is. And as this becomes more integrated within you, you may notice that your need for validation continues to soften, not because you are pushing it away, but because you are no longer depending on external responses to confirm what you already feel to be true within yourself. There is a quiet reassurance that begins to take its place, a steady knowing that does not fluctuate with opinions or reactions, a sense of inner agreement that allows you to move forward without constantly checking whether you are being perceived in the right way. And this does not disconnect you from others. It actually allows you to connect more authentically because you are no longer adjusting yourself in subtle ways to maintain approval. You are simply present as you are, allowing your words, when they do come, to reflect that presence rather than distort it. This is a form of honesty that feels calm rather than forceful, clear rather than confrontational, and it carries a kind of ease that makes your interactions feel more natural, less strained, less driven by underlying tension or expectation. And as you continue to move in this way, something else begins to unfold within you, something that goes beyond communication and into the way you experience your own thoughts, where you are no longer overwhelmed by them, in the same way no longer feeling the need to follow every thought to its conclusion or express it in order to release it, but instead allowing thoughts to pass through your awareness without attachment, without urgency, without the need to act on each one. This creates a sense of mental spaciousness, a feeling that your mind is no longer crowded with unfinished expressions or unspoken reactions that feel heavy, but instead open, clear, capable of holding thoughts lightly without being pulled in every direction. And within that openness, your intuition begins to feel more accessible, more present, more distinguishable from the noise that once surrounded it, because you have created the conditions for it to be heard, not by trying to find it, but by removing what was covering it. And this is one of the deeper gifts of what you have just experienced. Not just silence in your words, but clarity in your awareness. Not just restraint in your expression, but refinement in your perception. And this refinement becomes something you carry forward, not as something you need to remember, but as something that now feels natural, something that continues to guide you in quiet ways, helping you sense when to speak, when to wait, when to engage, and when to remain still. So as you move beyond this period, there is no need to return to how things were before, no need to resume patterns that no longer feel aligned, because you have already stepped into something different, something more grounded, more intentional, more connected to the deeper rhythm of your own awareness. And that rhythm does not rush, it does not force, it does not seek constant expression. It moves with a quiet certainty, allowing words to arise when they are ready, allowing silence to remain when it is needed, and trusting that both are equally valuable, equally meaningful, equally part of the same unfolding presence that you are now beginning to fully recognize within yourself. And as this awareness continues to settle within you, there is a quiet realization that begins to feel more complete, more whole, as if something that once felt scattered has now found its place without force, without urgency, simply through your willingness to pause and allow. You understand now, in a way that does not need to be explained, that this period of silence was never about withholding yourself from the world, but about returning to yourself more fully, about gathering the parts of your energy that had been dispersed through constant expression and allowing them to come back into alignment within you. There is a sense of returning, Not to who you were before, but to a deeper version of who you have always been, beneath the noise, beneath the habits, beneath the subtle pressures to always respond, always explain, always participate in ways that did not always reflect your true state. And in this return, there is a calm kind of clarity that does not demand attention, but simply exists, steady and present, guiding you without needing to announce itself. You feel it in the way you pause before speaking. You feel it in the way you no longer feel compelled to fill every silence. You feel it in the way your words, when they come, feel more aligned, more considered, more reflective of something real rather than something reactive. And perhaps most importantly, you feel it in the way you are now able to sit with yourself without discomfort, without the need to distract or explain or escape what is within you. Because what is within you no longer feels overwhelming or unclear, but grounded, settled, and quietly understood. This is not something that happened suddenly. It unfolded gradually, moment by moment. Each time you chose stillness over impulse, each time you allowed a thought to remain unspoken, each time you trusted that not everything needed to be expressed immediately in order to have meaning. And through those small, consistent choices, something within you shifted. Something stabilized, something aligned. So as you move forward from here, there is no need to hold tightly to rules or restrictions, no need to measure your silence or control your words in a rigid way, because what you have gained is not a technique but an understanding, not a discipline but a deeper awareness that will continue to guide you naturally. You will speak when it feels true. You will remain silent when it feels right. And neither choice will come from hesitation or uncertainty, but from a quiet confidence that now exists within you, a confidence that does not need to prove itself through constant expression, but simply rests in knowing. And this knowing will continue to support you in ways that are not always visible, helping you move through situations with greater clarity, helping you respond rather than react, helping you maintain your sense of self, even in environments that once felt overwhelming or unclear. Because you have experienced what it feels like to be centered within yourself, and that experience does not disappear once it is recognized. It stays with you. It becomes part of how you move, how you speak, how you listen, how you exist within your own awareness. And even as life continues, as conversations return, as interactions unfold, there will always be a part of you that remembers this stillness, that knows it is available to you at any moment, that understands you do not have to be pulled into noise in order to be present in the world. You can remain grounded, you can remain clear, you can remain aligned, and from that place, everything you express will carry a different quality. Not louder, not more frequent, but more meaningful, more intentional, more connected to what is real within you. So there is nothing more you need to do, nothing more you need to seek, nothing more you need to force into understanding. Because what needed to be seen has already begun to reveal itself, quietly, gently, in a way that does not overwhelm but settles into you with a sense of calm certainty. And in that certainty, you are no longer searching for the right words, or the right timing, or the right way to express what you feel. Because you trust that when the moment comes, your words will meet it naturally, without strain, without doubt, without the need to overthink or over-explain. Until then, you carry this stillness with you, not as silence that holds you back, but as presence that holds you steady, not as absence, but as depth, not as something temporary, but as something that has now become part of who you are, quietly guiding you forward, one moment at a time, with a calm and steady awareness that no longer needs to be spoken to be understood. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is hold your words until they become truth instead of reaction. And if this message found you at the right moment, you'll feel it settling quietly within you. Stay close if you're learning to move with that kind of stillness,